Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. It seems like a harmless childhood story, but it may be remembering something far older. A memory of sacrifice, a whisper from the ancient world when bread was sacred and food could come alive. This isn't just a fairy tale. It's a myth, a creation story, a warning, and the truth behind it goes back over 3,000 years. Welcome back, Darklings. Before we uncover its secrets, let's begin with the most well-known version of the tale. Once upon a time, an old woman and an old man lived alone in a quiet little cottage. They had no children, only each other, and the days passed slowly. One morning, the old woman decided to bake something special. A gingerbread man. She gave him raisin eyes, a sweet smile, and sugar drop buttons down his chest. She laid him on the tray and placed him in the oven, but when she opened the door, he leapt out. He had come to life. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. And off he sped, out the door and into the garden. The old woman shrieked, the old man gave chase, but the gingerbread man only laughed. Soon he met a pig, snuffling in the mud. Stop! Let me eat you, the pig said. But the gingerbread man just ran faster, shouting, I've run away from the old woman, I've run away from the old man, and I can run away from you too. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. He raced on through the fields, the pig, old man, and old woman all trailing behind him. Then came a cow, grazing lazily in the sun. Stop! Let me eat you, the cow called. But once again the gingerbread man jeered, I've run away from the old woman, I've run away from the old man, I've run away from the pig, and I can run away from you too. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. On and on he ran, through hedgerows and meadows, past a group of threshers working in the fields. Stop! Let us eat you, they cried. But he only called out, I've run away from the old woman, the old man, the pig, the cow, and I can run away from you too. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. But then he came to a river, and for the first time the gingerbread man stopped. He couldn't swim. A fox appeared, sleek and smiling. Hop on my back, said the fox. I'll carry you across the water. The gingerbread man climbed on without hesitation, still certain he could outrun them all. As the water deepened, the fox said, Climb onto my neck. And when it grew deeper still, he said, Climb onto my nose. Then, with a snap of his jaws, the fox tossed the gingerbread man into the air and swallowed him whole. The gingerbread man is one of those tales we think we know, but behind the sweet crust lies something older, stranger, and far more widespread than you might expect. When the gingerbread man first leapt onto the page in 1865, appearing in St. Nicholas's magazine for children, the editor noted, A servant girl from Maine told it to my children, and she said an old lady told it to her in her childhood. In other words, by the time it was written down, it had already lived for generations, whispered in kitchens and nurseries, handed down like a secret recipe. Scholars believe the version told in 19th century Maine was shaped by the diverse mix of immigrant families settling in New England, English, Irish, German, and Scandinavian communities, many of whom brought with them older folk tales of runaway food. Among the Slavic peoples, there's the tale of Kolobok, a cheerful little bread bun or dough ball who escapes from his elderly makers and rolls away into the world. Like the gingerbread man, he sings boastfully of outwitting everyone who tries to eat him, until he meets a cunning fox. The fox flatters him, praising his beautiful voice and coaxing him closer so he can hear it better. Kolobok sings one final song and is swiftly devoured. The ending feels eerily familiar, and not just because it mirrors the gingerbread man's fate. It also echoes Aesop's fable of the fox and the crow, in which a fox tricks a crow out of a piece of cheese. The fox praises the crow's beauty, wonders aloud whether her voice is just as lovely, and when she caws in pride, the cheese tumbles from her beak straight into his waiting jaws. The fox, it seems, has long been a symbol of charm and deception, especially when hunger is involved. And it's not just in Slavic lands. In Scotland, the role is played by a wee bannock, a humble oatcake that escapes the griddle and rolls away. In Norway, it's a pancake that runs from its makers, only to be outwitted, not by a fox, but by a pig. The pig offers to ferry the pancake across a brook on its snout, and halfway over, swallows it whole. In Germany, the story ends with the pancake leaping straight into the mouths of hungry children. All across Europe and even beyond, we find versions of this same peculiar tale. But why? Why does this strange story pattern repeat itself, again and again in so many different lands? The gingerbread man is created, comes to life, and then rebels. He runs from his maker, he puts his trust in the wrong creature, and it leads to his downfall. It's a pattern we've seen before. In the book of Genesis, God creates Adam, the first man, from dust. Eve is shaped from Adam's rib, and together they live in paradise until they trust the serpent, break the rules, and fall. It's a story of creation and defiance, of trusting the wrong voice, of what happens when a being turns against its creator. And it's not alone. In Greek myth, Pandora is crafted by the gods, the first woman shaped from clay by Hephaestus at Zeus's command. She is gifted with beauty, music, and curiosity, and given just one rule: do not open the jar. But she does, and from that single disobedient act, all the evils of the world are released. In ancient Mesopotamia, the gods shaped mankind from clay mixed with divine blood. Their purpose was simple: to serve, quietly, obediently, but humanity multiplied. Their voices grew loud, defiant. They refused to stay in their place, and so the god Enlil sends a great flood to wipe them out. Only one man, Atrahasis, survives after building an ark. So what are these stories really trying to tell us? At their heart, they are warnings, cautionary tales passed down through myth and scripture. They remind us, don't defy your creator, know your place, and whatever you do, don't grow too proud. Because in these stories there is always a cost. Knowledge brings suffering, disobedience brings exile. There is always a punishment to the ambition. Another theme that runs through them all is the idea of humans being created from clay by the gods, then given breath. It's one of the oldest ideas in myth. And in the Gingerbread Man, that same motif appears. A body is shaped from dough and comes to life. And while it's easy to imagine a gingerbread man running on his little legs, earlier versions show simple pieces of food, bread, pancakes, dough, that come to life. They flee, they boast, and in the end, they are tricked and devoured. So why is it food, of all things, that comes to life in these tales? The answer may lie in how ancient cultures saw the harvest. It's especially curious that in Ireland alone, folklorists have recorded at least 33 distinct versions of the runaway food tale. That's more than a coincidence. It suggests something deeper, perhaps even a Celtic origin. And when we view it through that lens, something begins to shift. Because in Celtic belief systems, everything had a spirit, not just people, but rivers, stones, trees, and yes, even bread. And once you understand that, the story changes. That little cake rolling out of the hearth and into the world isn't just a joke. It's a spirit, a living thing, trying to flee its fate. Bannocks and cakes were often prepared for seasonal festivals, especially Lunasar, traditionally held on the 1st of August. They were laid on doorsteps and placed on ancestral altars as offerings to Lu, the shining warrior god of skill and craftsmanship. In some modern folk traditions, a special loaf of bread is baked, shaped like a man, to symbolise the god himself. Whether this is a true echo of older ritual is widely debated, but it's a fascinating connection. Because this idea runs deep, that the spirit of the harvest must be embodied and then sacrificed. Not always as bread, and not always eaten. Sometimes, something far more disturbing. Ancient Roman writers claimed that the Druids of Gaul built enormous wicker effigies in the shape of gods and set them ablaze with human victims trapped inside, a ritual of fire and sacrifice meant to bless the land and ensure a bountiful harvest. Modern scholars still debate whether this was true or simply Roman propaganda meant to cast the Druids as savages. but whether fact or fable, the image has endured. A towering man of straw and branch, standing against the sky, consumed by flame. And then there's the song. In many versions, the runaway food sings a boastful refrain, but is it just a rhyme for children or something older? In the bardic tradition, Celtic poets preserved history and sacred knowledge through song and chant. Could these runaway refrains be their distant echo? But it's not just Ireland. Across Europe for centuries, harvest time rituals featured human-like effigies made from grain, straw, or other natural materials, and they weren't decorations. They were vessels, made to hold something sacred. In many pagan-era traditions, the last sheaf of the harvest was believed to contain the spirit of the crop, the living force that had ripened the fields and fed the people. In other words, it was alive with a divine life force, and so it was treated with reverence. That final sheaf was braided into the form of a corn dolly, sometimes known as the corn mother, barley bride or old woman. And just to be clear, in this context, corn doesn't mean maize. In Old English, it was a general word for grain, wheat, rye, barley, the staple crops of the land. The corn dolly was brought home with ceremony, given a place of honour by the hearth, kept safe and dry through the winter as an esteemed guest. But come spring, she had to die. Because this wasn't just preservation, it was transference. The spirit of the grain had to be returned to the earth so it could rise again. In many regions, the corn dolly was ritually destroyed, sometimes burned, her ashes scattered on the fields, sometimes buried, sometimes ploughed directly into the soil. In Germany, the last sheaf was shaped into a grandma or maiden and drenched with water as a charm to bring rain. In Baltic and Slavic regions, it was fed to livestock to bless the herd and ensure fertility. But wherever it appeared, the core belief remained the same. This figure contained the life force of the crop, and that life force had to be killed and resurrected to keep the cycle turning. Therefore, in a world where the harvest meant life or death, where crops were believed to carry the spirit of the land, it's no surprise that in old folk tales, bread speaks. In Hungarian folk belief, magical helpers were sometimes called taltos, a kind of shaman or spirit guide, and often loaves of bread played that role. They warned heroes of danger, offered protection, or boasted of their strength. In many stories, the bread hides while shouting fearlessly at a foe. They buried me in the ground, and I survived. They cut me down with sickles, and I survived. They threshed me, ground me, baked me in an oven, and I survived. The enemy, sometimes a dragon, sometimes the devil himself, flees in fear, imagining the voice must belong to some great and terrible creature. And this sounds familiar. The Gingerbread Man, too, boasts about what he's outrun. The old man, the old woman, the cow, the pig. So maybe he isn't just a cheeky biscuit. Maybe he's a fragment of something older, a time when grain was believed to hold the divine spirit of the harvest. And perhaps these tales of bread coming to life are simply the next step in that ancient belief. But gingerbread men themselves have a dark past. Once they belonged to royalty, and maybe even to the occult. Gingerbread men first found fame in the glittering court of Queen Elizabeth I. The Queen famously commissioned gingerbread likenesses of her visiting courtiers, tiny spiced figurines, intricately decorated with gold leaf and sugar icing. But gingerbread wasn't always used to honour esteemed guests. In early modern Europe, it was also associated with something far more unsettling. There were widespread folk beliefs that witches could work magic using food human effigies, a fear echoed in broader European anxieties around puppets and voodoo doll-like figures. To pierce the figure was to wound the person, to burn it was to bring fever, to eat it was to consume their power, and gingerbread, already shaped in human form, was a natural vessel for these fears. City laws from 16th and 17th century Germany and the Netherlands even forbade the sale of certain moulded pastries, including gingerbread men, when made with intent for superstitious practices. Still, despite these darker associations, gingerbread never lost its place in the public imagination. By the 18th century, it had become a beloved treat at country fairs and festivals. sold in stalls and market tents, wrapped in ribbons and icing. And here, another tradition emerged, the gingerbread husband. Young women would buy or be gifted a little gingerbread man as a love charm. It was said that if you ate him, you'd soon find yourself a real husband. It sounds like a quaint tradition, but it may reflect something far older. The earliest European gingerbread was different to our modern-day recipes, a dense mixture of breadcrumbs, honey, and exotic spices pressed into carved wooden moulds. And it wasn't made to be eaten casually. It was shaped into saints and angels, edible icons, crafted by medieval monks as acts of devotion. This is the earliest form of the gingerbread man, a ritual food, a thing to be blessed, and consumed with reverence. The biscuit became a body. To consume it was to participate in something holy. In early Christianity, the same idea becomes central. At the Last Supper, Christ declares that the bread and wine are his flesh and blood. The faithful consume them as an act of remembrance. And it echoes something older. Across many cultures, eating was not just physical, it was spiritual. In Aztec ritual, idols were shaped from amaranth flour and blood. Dough formed into the bodies of gods. These sacred figures were paraded through the streets, worshipped, and then ritually broken and eaten by the community. Even in ancient Greece, we find echoes of this idea, hidden in the shadowy teachings of the Orphic mystery cults. Persephone bore a divine child after laying with Zeus in the form of a serpent, Zagreus, a boy destined, some say, to become ruler of the cosmos. But the jealous Titans lured the child away with toys and tore him to pieces. They boiled him, roasted him, and ate him. Only his heart was saved, and from that heart he was reborn as Dionysus, god of resurrection and ecstasy. Zeus, in his fury, struck the Titans down with a thunderbolt, and from their scorched remains, mankind was said to have been formed. So in this strange and ancient myth, humans are born from the ashes of those who devoured a god. It's a theological explanation for why we are flawed, yet divine. In many ancient belief systems, to consume the body of a god, or something that represented them, was to absorb their essence, their power, wisdom, strength, or fertility. It was a kind of mystical union, becoming one with the divine. Many of the gods worshipped in the ancient world were vegetation or fertility deities. They died and were reborn with the seasons. To symbolically eat them allowed humans to take part in that eternal cycle. It's the same belief we saw earlier, that the spirit of the harvest lives within the grain, and that by shaping it into bread and eating it, we mirror the rhythms of the earth itself, life, death, and the return. And so, when we turn back to the gingerbread man, this little figure of dough, suddenly alive, who is pursued, caught, and eaten, we glimpse something far older than a simple fairy tale. He carries both of humanity's oldest stories, the story of our creation, shaped from clay and given life, and the story of our communion, that to consume a god was to share in their power. It is the same story told of Zagreus, torn apart and devoured, the same story told of the corn spirit, baked into loaves and ritually consumed. It is the memory of a time when bread was God, and by eating it, we joined the cycle of death and resurrection ourselves. That is the true secret behind the gingerbread man, a children's tale that carries, hidden in sugared laughter, the memory of mankind's first religion. But the gingerbread man is not the only fairy tale with ancient secrets. Next, we journey into the princess and the pea, and uncover a 3,000-year-old mystery hidden beneath a single mattress. Click here to watch it now. See you in a future video.